Welcome to Put a Word on It. We're in our third season now of doing these, and it's wonderful, the many interviews that we've gotten. And in some cases, I've had people say, wait a minute, didn't you interview so-and-so? I really enjoyed that. I'd love to see that one more time. And it made me think. It's the same with scriptures. It's the same with meeting people that are very inspirational to you. We bring them back. We read them again, and that's what we want to do. The man that we want you to meet again, all over again, is Chris Spencer. Chris is a former Tennessee Titan, played in the NFL for a number of years. We met him at a faith, fatherhood, and football banquet, and just the way he talked, the heart that he spoke with was just wonderful. So here's a man that we want you to listen to one more time because his inspiration is beyond belief. You'll enjoy it. He's on our board now here at Men of Valor, and he means the world to us. Here's Chris. Welcome to Put a Word on It, a podcast presented by Men of Valor. In each episode, we're going to talk with a different man, but each one with a unique journey from brokenness to freedom. I'm your host, Rudy Kalis. I spent over 40 years as a TV sportscaster, then retired and joined the Men of Valor program as a volunteer. So join the conversation. Reconciling men to God, their families, and society. Welcome to another edition of Put a Word on It, brought to you by Interstate AC. Wonderful folks, thank you for your support. I want you to meet Chris Spencer. I met him when he was in the locker room for the Tennessee Titans, a big old lineman, spent 10 years in the NFL. But there was something different about him. There was a light about him. And it's an interesting life because he had so many things that were going right in his life. But underneath it all, there was a story that was powerful. Here's Chris Spencer. Chris, you're one of the great stories for me. I look at it and I say, you were an undefeated high school team. You were a high school All-American. I mean, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. I think. Was it easy for you at that young age?
No, not at all. I grew up in a small town called Bentonia, Mississippi, in my early part of my life, where I grew up with my granddad and my mom. My dad wasn't around as a young man, and my mom had four other kids, and so I was the oldest, but I pretty much had to help her raise those kids. And I tell people all the time, my mom and I grew up together, because she was 15 when she had me, and so young and just didn't have a lot, but we had a lot of love in our house. And my mom she was as strong as a rock, and still to this day, she was the mom and the dad. And she grew up under a strong father in my granddad. And at the time we grew, we had a farm, grew over 1,000 acres of cotton and soybeans. And so that was my life for a really long time. Early ages of getting up in the morning, getting out to the fields. Helped my granddad with the tractor before school, getting everything set before school, go off to school. And then as soon as school was over, I was jetting right back out to the fields to help my granddad. And I started driving a tractor early age, and pretty much that's kind of how I grew up. It was tough, mom, no dad around, working two jobs, trying to make ends meet for a family of 4 and 5, because we had a brother that passed away when he was a young baby, but we had 5. It was 5 of us. And then, but the love that we had in our family, it outweighs all the bad times we had, with no food on the table, or, waking up, the lights are out, and so it's, but God has been good to us. And, that's the two things that my mom said was going to happen in our life was you're going to somebody's school and you're going to somebody's church. In a discussion. If you can't buy by those two rules, you can leave my house now. So and she was very, very strong about that. So there was no getting up and going to Sunday school, or showing up at church, or showing up at a schoolyard. So
there's a lot of guys that spend time with in prison who've never had a male image in their growing up. They never had really the discipline. They would run in the streets. It seemed to me, between your mother and the strength, your grandfather, and the discipline of all the work that you had, did you think that kept you from running with some other people? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I won't say I didn't end up running into it, but early on, it taught me the value and the discipline of how to do things the right way. My granddad taught us, he's like, look, what I'm going to teach you is how to work, and how to work hard. And, you will, if you're going to be a ditch digger the rest of your life, I'm going to teach you how to be the best at it. And so everything that you approach, There's no shortcuts. And so he taught us that early on in life. And we got to an age about 13. My granddad sold the farm, and we ended up moving over to another town called Flora, Mississippi, where I spent the rest of my life at. And, it was more inner cities and, the projects. And so I ran with a group of guys that, my close friends. We were thick as thieves, and but those guys, again, I think when you're looking at those environments, it was really easy to identify who people are. Like, we are very good judge of characters, and we can see things. We can see things in people when you grow up in inner city and rural areas that sometimes you miss if you're in the big city, because there's so many other things that's happening around you that it doesn't make you hone in on like just being able to look at people. And so the group that I ran with, those guys done some things that selling drugs and stealing cars and things like that I ran with, but they saw something different in me. And whenever they would get into mischievous things, they would always say, "Hey, we're going to drop you off." Like, what do you mean? We're just going to drop you off. And it wasn't until later in my life where I started to look back over those times where every time those guys got into something, they dropped me off. And I remember this one particular time where I got dropped off. We were all hanging out, and I said, "Hey, we got to go make a run." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm coming with you guys." And they said, "Okay." We jump in the car, and then they pull up to my apartment and say, "All right, we'll catch you in a little bit." And then 5 minutes later, those guys are pulled over and arrested for having a trunk full of marijuana. And so I was 5 minutes from being a part of that. And, and at the time I sit back and I look at that and say, man, what my life would have been if I would have ended up just being associated, being a part of it. So we've had some ups and downs throughout life, and it wasn't easy. But it also it made me naive to, what my gifts were, when it came to athletics. Because to me, I was just like, I was All-American in high school, as you said. It never dawned on me. It didn't dawn on me until later in high school of what my potential could be, if I focused more time in it. And so I was just a good old farm kid that just wanted to work and help my mom take care of my sister and brothers.
I met several guys in prison who said, "Man, you covered me when I was playing ball in high school. Yeah, I played such school. I was all state." And I said, "What happened?" And then you said the words. You said 5 minutes. 5 minutes of stupid, 5 minutes of decisions. Is that part of your interest in this ministry, is the fact that 5 minutes changed your life, and the fact that in some guys it changed the wrong way? Absolutely.
Being in the wrong place at the wrong time, especially when it's not in your DNA, not who you are, and some bad things could happen. It's drawn me to this ministry, and then also just the faith base of what this ministry stands for, and knowing throughout my career, my whole, even just as a kid, Philippians 4:13 was always my verse of, I could do all things through Christ who strengthened me. And so I would always lean back on that, and because I knew, for whatever reason, the track that I was on in life, it's not me. And so whenever I start to question the things that were happening in my life, I can always lean back and say, it doesn't matter. Whatever he puts in front of me, I can do. And that was whether I was transitioning from, this school where it was predominantly Black, busing over to a high school that was predominantly white, where I misspoke one time, and the kids over there, was Argyle sweaters and, fancy cars. And I remember saying the word, they said, "What'd you have for breakfast this morning?" I said, "Cereals." And they said, "There's no S on cereal." And I was like, and I remember that moment, I just, for the rest of the semester, I didn't say a word to anybody. I just took a step back and navigated and watched, and just said, "God, you have to, I'm leaning on you to help me understand this world and how to navigate where I can get some out of it." And so, looking at that and how I've kind of transitioned through life, and looking at that 5 minutes of how it could change my life, and then coming to Nashville and meeting Larry and starting to understand what Men of Valor stood for, and then having a stepfather who was in prison and having him come out of prison and not, back and forth. I think he went back a couple of times because he didn't know how to transition back, and seeing that as part of my life as well. And then seeing what you guys are doing here, what Men of Valor really stand for, it's really drawn me in to really bring a perspective of, having guys who, look like me be a part of the solution as well as not just being the one that's on the other side of the bars.
I didn't realize you had a stepfather who was in prison. That gives you another sense of that. Help me understand a little bit. There's a lot of guys that I would cover, be around. I mean, now you play college ball. You are a first-round draft pick in the NFL. You play 10 years in the NFL. How do you handle ego, and how do guys, some of them can't be athletes, will find that ego running with the wrong crowd. But how did you handle ego?
Well, for a long time, I didn't have an ego. And then I end up getting drafted, as a first round center, and I still didn't feel like I had an ego. But there were some little small things that I started to change in my life when you start to get to a certain status and get, a certain tender in a professional sport. Everyone knows who you are. You go into a restaurant, you get a table, it's not a whole lot of, pushback on the things that you want to do. And so I remember becoming a free agent one year, and my focus was trying to make as much as money as I could make while I was playing a sport that I knew was going to come to an end one day. And I lost all focus on what God designed me to be. And I remember going into Seattle, getting ready to leave Seattle to go to Chicago. I remember telling my agent or, my wife, and it's like, I'm not going anywhere and play for X amount of money. So it has to be this amount of money for me to even get off my couch and go. And I remember standing out. We had a place out in Washington. I remember standing out at the front door and had these crosses up on top of a hill. And I never knew why they were there. I still don't know why those crosses were up on this hill. And I remember looking at it, and it was just, something hit me. It was just kind of like, okay. And I was like, I had all these teams calling me the first day of free agency, and then all of a sudden the next day, dead silence. And then I end up taking a deal for less than what I said I was going to go play for, to go to Chicago. And I was like, why Chicago out of all places? And I get there, and the first thing the O-line coach tells me is that, hey, I have my 5 starting guys. You're not one of them. And I just pulled up in the parking lot to be introduced as the starting center. They paid me to come in to be the starting center for the Chicago Bears. And I remember going through training camp, just trying to figure out, why did you bring me here? I don't understand why. And it wasn't until like I end up starting at right guard, at the first game of the season, and was a starter there first game of the season. And I remember going to the left side the next year. They moved me over to the left guard as a starting left guard. And then I remember, playing against Green Bay, and the left tackle gives up 4 sacks. And then I get the blame. And I remember driving home after the coach telling me that they were benching me for him giving up 4 sacks. And I remember saying, why God? Why God? I remember driving down the highway, 20-minute drive home. And it felt like it was 2 hours because the sky just opened up. And it was like, what did I design you to be? Who did I design you to be? It's like, your focus have went to money over everything. Money over me, money over your family, and it's taking you completely out of what I designed you for. And I remember having this conversation with him back and forth it felt like an hour on my way home. And I remember getting home, and then everything just kind of like quiet down. And I walked to the front door, and my wife was standing there. She was upset. She wanted, she was calling my agent saying, we need to get you traded. You got to get out of here. Can't do this. And I remember her telling her, it's like, no, we stand. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I've overlooked you over these last how many ever years with my focus on taking care of my body, taking care of me so I can make a lot of money. Which I thought was for you guys, but it was for my own pleasure. And I want to apologize to you, and I apologize to our kids. And I said, it won't happen. It won't happen again. And she just started crying. And I remember just standing there like, man, I didn't even realize it. And she felt it, and she knew it, but she never said anything. And I remember from that day on, I remember I went back and checked my ego at the door again. And so it's ego is a thing. And it's strong, and it can take over you, and it just take the right timing, the right things, the right events to snap you back. And, and so my advice to a lot of guys is, when it come to success and doing things is like, what would you want God to see? What do you want your mom to see when no one is watching? Who are you? And I teach that to my kids now. It's like, who are you when no one is watching? I don't want to have to go pull up a camera to look at your behavior because you've done something, but you're not honest with me. So you need to start thinking every time you step out this house is, who are you as a person when no one is watching?
God's taught you some powerful lessons in your life. Yeah. You know, the name of our program is Put a Word on It. Have you thought about that? Any word come to your mind?
Just courageous. Just for me, it's always been, I've always kind of been reserved about, sharing my story and letting people in to see it. And so, over the last, since I've retired and started my own company and, just being comfortable within my skin, it's been all about just being courageous, letting people know my story. A lot of people don't know that I'm a severe dyslexic. And for a long time, I shield that from a lot of people. They didn't know that about me. And, but it's my gift and it's not a curse. And for a long time, I thought it was, being that I was growing up where we didn't have the resources to help with that. And so just, navigate my way through the world and through college. And again, I made good grades, but I had to work hard. I had to find my own solutions to how do I solve problems. And I never prayed the prayer while I was playing ball of like, God, whatever door you want close, you close it. Whatever door you want open it. I never prayed that prayer because I didn't want him to take football away from me, because it was my shield from the world of like letting people know or letting people into, some of the deficiencies that I was ashamed of, that I thought that it was an issue. I thought it was an issue, but it was more of my gift, as I started to work through it. I was sitting there playing on the computer one day and this dyslexia course popped up. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I was a dyslexic. And that's kind of how deep that I buried it and just worked and grind to try to figure out how to navigate through this world. And I picked up the phone and she was like, hello, my name is Sue Johnston. And I said, hello, Miss Johnson. Wait a minute. I don't know why I'm calling you. And she was like, well, who are you? And so I told her who I was. And she was like, well, do you have any dyslexia issues? And I said, well, yeah, I was diagnosed as a dyslexic kid as a young man, as a kid. And so she was like, well, tell me a little bit more about your story. And all of a sudden we had this conversation. She says, well, I have a program that I do, and it's normally like a 2-week program to kind of help adults, kids, all through these programs. And she's like, man, normally I'm booked up 2 years in advance, but I have this starting tomorrow, I have 2 weeks available that I kind of booked off. And I'd love for you to come in and just sit down with me. And I remember going through her program, and at the end of her program, I felt so comfortable about the next phase of life and what my skills were and what I can do in life, that I laid in bed and prayed a prayer. God, whatever door you want open it. Whatever door you want close it. I'm ready to walk and go wherever you want me to go. And 2 weeks later, I fly back here getting ready to sign my contract with the Titans. And I step off the plane. The next day I was supposed to sign my contract. So I go to the gym and do a workout, and I get into a 2-hour workout. And then I do a back pedal at the end of my workout and tear my Achilles. And I remember laying on the ground. It's the day before I'm signing my extension. And I remember laying on the ground and said, God, you got a sense of humor. I hear you. The door's closed. I picked up the phone and called my wife and said, hey, I'm retiring from football. He's taught me a lot of powerful lessons. And I'm just thankful that I'm, gotten to a place where I'm comfortable to be, courageous enough to share my story, because, people need to hear those things that can potentially give them the spark that they need in life to move forward. And so you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. It should be something that, you look at as a gift, and just the way you vision things and see things. And so he's given me that courage over the last years to really just step out there on faith and be what I'm called to be.
Well, thank you for having the courage to tell us all about it. It's been remarkable. Thank you, Chris. Love that interview. Love spending time with Chris. Let me put a word on it. I love the word courageous, because how he slipped little things in. A stepfather that was incarcerated. Wait a minute, I have dyslexia. I see everything backwards, and yet somehow I've survived through all of that. And he had the courage to battle through all of that. That's what just inspires me, to be around men like that. He's made the most out of his life. Thanks for joining us. Joining us again next time? I hope so, as we put a word on it.